Well, Coops, little bonus episode, a lot going on in the game, but people look and go, hey, where are they? We've had a renovation.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it more on the family podcast, but there we go. Tiki bar style.
Yeah, we've got a new studio for those listening. Couple of different options we've got with the set. Still got the red velvet curtains in parts, which is obviously
Our trademark.
which is our trademark for branding. But yeah, we got some cool. If you have any suggestions of things we want to throw up on the walls and stuff like that, we can, if you want to send us free stuff to put on the walls,
It's a great idea.
hey, feel free to do that to all of our listeners out there.
Cool prints like this one behind me, people. There's one like a 1970s print that you used to see on the walls of your grand's place and things like that. Anything you think, like, honestly, just send it along. What is that one over there? There's an old photo there of Reg Reagan with Jack and Coops. Do you remember getting that photo done?
I don't remember. I remember it was at our house just up the road, not too far, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Per se.
So what was, the two surfing boys, Ronnie and Addin Blakey?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, prominent in the surf
Blakeys.
industry. They had a magazine called Monster Children that was sort of like a fashion, surf, culture magazine. And for the opening edition, they asked if we get a photo with Reg. And you blokes were just hanging around. And they said, why don't the boys jump in? My favourite photo, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
It's not often you see Reg with kids.
No.
It's probably not. Yeah.
Excuse me for the coughing, people. I've got a little bit of a chest infection.
Yeah, you haven't been well, have you?
I'm pushing through the train back.
You
Look at the light
Sweats?
sweat going, man.
Yeah, you haven't been well.
Do you think Ogan Reg?
I'm worried about you.
Is it time? Is it time to make another little appearance? Because Reg disappeared during the woke years, but now you're seeing woke die on the vine.
Yeah, I think it's coming back. There's still a heavy resistance I think it's kind of divided like 50-50 now of people that kind of want that old school humour back and the people that are not wanting
Opposed to it.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting in the next few years how the landscape, particularly in media, because you see Dana White.
Wow.
Yeah. Dana White, while he was here for the UFC, slammed Australian media calling us all pussies.
Oh, come on.
I don't think he was referring to us. I think he loves the potty. He's a massive fan of our potty. But
I know Peter Fitzsimon said a few things at him. I think it was a shot back at Fitzy.
Yeah.
There was a little bit going on. Some people have an opinion on UFC. The growth has been amazing with the UFC. Do you think, right? Here's a question for you. If there was Floyd Mayweather, what would be the biggest fight in the UFC if it happened tomorrow?
Right now in the UFC, I would probably say with current fighters,
Yep.
John Jones.
Yep.
He's the best of them all. Oh, geez, I don't know. It'd be cool to see. I mean, I think they're different weights, but like
If they could get together,
Alex-
just name anyone.
Alex Pereira and John Jones, I think they're both good, but I think Alex Pereira's light heavyweight and John Jones is heavyweight.
Okay, so let's just imagine for a second, you get to walk through one door to a stadium where you got that UFC fight's going to take place, or through the other one, you've got Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. Which one do you walk into?
I'd probably go to UFC.
Yeah.
I think they're bigger
Interesting.
right now. They're bigger names. I think they've been marketed well.
This part of the world, I mean, people like Canelo in Mexico, he's a god. And Terence Crawford, pound for pound, probably the best fighter in the world. So those guys in that part of the world, they have monster profiles, more than the UFC fighters.
You see, like with the boxers now, they have they're probably not as household names as they were 30 years ago, where you had Tyson, Ali, like these huge boxing names which were gods across the world. Now I think the UFC probably market their people better, where they're like, you see Conor McGregor, people like that who came through who were just global megastars.
Well, Kurt, if you're, correct me if I'm wrong, well, it's one belt. So if you're the lightweight champion, it's one belt. Where what's really hurt boxing is WBO, WBC, IBF. It goes on and on and on, all these different ones. Compared to the day, back in the days when Muhammad Ali fought, those guys, it was one belt.
Yeah.
The king of the ring. And I suppose that's the thing with the UFC.
Yeah, it must be.
It's not divided up.
No, it's heavyweight, light heavyweight. They've got their weight divisions, but there's one belt in that division. So it's very clear to see who's number one, who's not. Whereas it's very hard in boxing. Sometimes you actually don't know. You think he's the champion, but he's not.
I tell you, a fighter, a boxer, this might interest you blokes. It might not, but, it might interest some of our listeners. Anthony Mundine, great friend of mine, Choco Mundine. His father, Tony Mundine, he fought, mate, he was an unbelievable fighter, incredible fighter. He fought a bloke called an Argentinian called Carlos Monzon for the title in Buenos Aires. And that was at the time when it was, basically it was one belt for each division. Now, Monzon beat him, but a terrific fight. And Monzon, I read recently, they put a thing at the top 10 pound fighters of all time, a certain magazine. Everyone's got their different opinions. They had Monzon at number 4.
Wow.
So you look at Choc's dad, how good a fighter he was, obviously. Duplessis. I said, geez, he's a... Have you interviewed him?
Yeah, Dricus. Yeah. He's a beast. He looked like he really cut down for the most recent fight that he just won last week. He looked like phenomenal. He put Sean Strickland in a body bag. Put him in a body bag.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. I heard someone the other day refer to him as Dutchman, but he's South African.
South African.
He must be. I'd say he's Afrikaans.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be Afrikaans, which is after.
He's played rugby union.
Yeah, Dutch German. Yeah.
I think he played under 18s for like the South African team.
Yeah. Did you like him? Was he a good guy?
Good bloke. Yeah, really good bloke. Seemed like a really just knockabout kind of. He really loves his rugby union over there. Like loved the Springbok. So
well, that's the game of the Afrikaans.
Yeah.
That's their big game.
But before we move on, back to Dana White. I actually have to say I agree with him. With the media calling Australian media pussies. I will say that. I 100% agree.
Mate, do you want me to call Buzz?
No. But I think particularly in like, there's shows that aren't and there's shows that are. Like your show on Fox is quite edgy and it's good.
Thank God.
And it's good. Yours is a good product.
Oh, thank you. I was really concerned there for a second.
Yeah. And I wouldn't see you guys getting much backlash or anything from... You probably do get some stuff potentially,
we
but
don't know about it. We're blissfully unaware.
Obviously, the radio show, the Colin Jackie O show, gets a lot of backlash, things like that. But I think what's so annoying about media now is even when I say we're doing a segment or something like that, we'll think of a funny character, we'll think of something, and you deter away from it sometimes, or you dull the segment down because there's a minority that might be offended by it, which is just...
You got to pass it through the funnel. Well, particularly you blokes found out, like the Sydney market as far as... I find the Sydney market as far as radio far more liberal than the Melbourne market. And you guys have found that out. So. Yeah.
It'd be nice for Australia to go, hey, you know what? We're not going to like... Sometimes there's going to be things we're not going to like and we won't listen to it or we won't be a fan of it, but...
Yeah. Just turn it off.
Just keep your opinion to yourselves.
Just turn it off.
Because there's people that enjoy it. There's people that work hard. They need a break. They want to be entertained by the things that they enjoy.
I read a thing recently that there was Media Watchdog. There was reports, complaints sent through, and there was one complaint saying that every morning I have to drive my kids to school. This is a Melbourne said, and they have to listen to that filth. Well, here's the thing. Every morning you're driving your kids and you are listening to the Colin Jackie O show. Surely you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So listen to something else.
Well, the beauty of social media is now you see like independents kind of going and they make whatever content that they want on social media and the people love it. People love it, but you can't see it on mainstream like TV or radio because of, clients and sponsors and fans that they want to keep their brand image safe. But you know what? Entertainment's entertainment, brother. That's what I say.
There are boundaries, but I'm with you. Some people get far too precious. Excuse me, chest again, mate. What I'm doing today,
mate. I'm worried about you. I'm actually worried about you.
So me too. Yeah.
I am. I am seriously.
But back to my point though. If you don't want to listen to it and it's not your cup of tea, don't complain to the Media Watchdog. Just don't listen to it or don't watch it.
I don't want to see us on Media Watchdog for just being honest on Backstage. You know what I mean? That's what happens backstage.
That's right.
We tell the hard truth.
Shoot from the hip.
Oh, bro, I'm so angry.
Been a lot going on in rugby league.
Yeah,
been happening.
Like what?
So your mate Christian Welch.
Welchy.
Yeah. Now his retirement. Hang on a second. A question for you. We had Brad Parker on. He was medically retired. Welshie wasn't medically retired. He
is medically retired.
Oh yeah, but
not in
medically.
Not in quotations. A lot of concussions. He had a bad one. The boys were saying in Geelong. They do a Geelong camp 2 weeks at the start of the preseason.
Oh, so it's concussion. I thought it was knee. I thought it was knee injuries. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he had a bad one recently, and apparently the boys said it quite rattled him Well, you have those ones where you're rattled for like weeks, and that's unfortunately for Welch, he's had a few in the past, so obviously he's come to that conclusion where he's got to medically retire, which is sad because Welch, he's been a consistent forward for them. I think the last couple of years he's been hurt, and there was one year there he was a bit out of form, but 2020, 2021, he was such an integral part of the squad, Welchie, and he's great for a team. He's such a good laugh, good value, and he's the player's man. Welchie was always the first one. If he thought something, if a young player was being treated wrong, or if the club, he was the first one as a player representative to go up to the club and say, hey, we need this for the playing group because it's going to help us. Yeah. So shout out to Welchie.
Yeah, good on you, Welchie. The first year of Magic Round, Jack Coops, was it 2018?
I think it was 2019.
2019, okay. It's one of the most heartbreaking things I've seen in the game. There was Welchie's mum. It was the parents' weekend for Magic Round that year. So all the parents, different parents, were getting up and talking about to a lot of the new parents who were involved with the club, what the club stood for as far as parents and all the rest of it, and their experiences with the club. And Christian's mum got up and spoke, and she spoke really emotionally. She said, I'm just so happy for Christian this year. He's having a great season because he missed out on the grand final that year with an ACL. Then he had another ACL, but now things are on track. Then we went to the game that night and did an ACL. And I was going, my God.
You thought it was her fault?
No.
God damn you. Put the mock on my son.
I turned around and said, what'd I tell you?
No, they are an awesome family. They actually, funny, Welchie used to go to, and his mum taught there, Villanova College, where me and Jack went to St. Augustine's. They were the brother college for Queensland. So we actually had, you might not remember this, but they used to come down and play us at the start of every year, and we had two billets from Villanova come down and
that's right.
Stayed at our house.
Yeah.
Yeah. They loved you. They were starstruck.
Yeah.
They were starstruck.
Yeah.
They loved Reggie and some of the other characters.
Remember we get billets sometimes. I'll get drunk and give them an Origin jersey. You had a couple of billets from New Zealand. They were lovely kids.
Yeah.
Gave one an Origin jersey, one an Australian jersey.
Yeah.
As they left, I was thinking to myself, oh, God, let's get those jerseys back. Can I break it to them? But it's hanging in a pool room somewhere, hopefully.
In New Zealand. I remember you, when the first house build that we did, remember that? And then we threw a party for the building company that had built it. Yep. And Dad got so blind, went to the garage and got all of his old Australian, Newcastle, New South Wales jersey and gave it to everyone. So everyone was just wearing Dad's merch. Anyway, then the Dad woke up the next day. I think he tried to get a few of them back before the end of the night, but some of them slipped through the cracks and he was missing a few. And you were so devastated.
I was.
Because at the time you're like, oh, who cares? But then when you sober up, oh
God,
devoed
regrets. Yeah, but it's getting close now with the trials about to hit. Well, really, the game's getting into. We had trials last weekend, but it's getting in full swing now.
Yeah.
Preparations.
Can I ask you before we get into some more rugby league news? There was an article that came out of you earlier in the week. I actually reported on it in my sports news, in my sports report. Yep. Yeah, the hard hitting questions. But you come out saying that you'd may be interested in taking out. The quote was, if a club's willing to pay me the silly amount I've asked for, I might be silly enough to take it. Yeah. Is that in reference to a head coaching role that you've been approached for?
There used to be a Rodney Dangerfield quote. He said, I would never join a golf club that would allow me to be a member. So it's like, if I ask for something, they're silly enough to pay it. Well, why not? Look,
I think that went over people's head, the Rodney Dangerfield one.
No, anyway, it's probably slightly wrong. The context is probably slightly wrong. Look, the bottom line is, because Buzz rang me because he'd heard a rumour, and what had happened, a third party just reached out to me and asked me a very, very broad question and said to me, are you interested? Have you got interest still in coaching? Which, again, very, very broad question. And some people, when you do, third parties do play silly buggers a little bit. I have got no idea. I've got no idea who the club was, and I don't want to know, because then when Buzz calls you and said, who's the club, you can say, I've got no idea.
So who was the third party? No, you don't say that.
But it happens a little bit. I remember when I was and firstly, I mean, are you interested? Of course. It's like someone saying, have you got interest anymore in coaching? I would not rule it out completely, because let's face it, you blokes know me. If something happened and my media gigs disappeared, what else can I do? And I can't be a courier. I can't drive a manual.
You could focus on the podcast.
Yeah, but you're doing a slow takeover. You're doing a soft takeover, I must say, on this. But, it's a little bit like, are you interested in coaching still? Of course I'm interested. At what point? What point? He didn't ask me at the time, head coach, assistant coach, house coach. He asked me the question, would you be interested in coaching? And I said, yes. And so, I don't know where it come from. I don't know if the person was playing silly buggers. I don't think they were. This person sort of stands up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's not unusual. I remember, Coop, in 1993, way back, I got a call from a third party, an agent, who said, how you going? I'd never met the person before. I barely heard of him before. And said, you played good this year for Newcastle. Would you be interested in having a meeting with a big Sydney club? And I'm like, yep. At the end of the year, yeah, sure, because NRL stands for not real long. See what you can do. And I said, which club is it? He said, I can't say, but it's one of the really big ones, and they've got a number 6 that's getting a little bit older, and they think that might move on soon. So I naturally sat there and I went, it's the Bulldogs, right? So I was planning all through the year, going, I'll be meeting at the Bulldogs at the end of the year. It turned out it was Manly, because Cliffy was a certain age. They underestimated the fact Cliffy was going to play for another 6-7 years.
Yeah.
But and went down and met. But that's an example of how third parties sometimes work. Yeah. Is that, they box clever and they'll go to a person who asks for a person.
Because they aren't allowed to approach directly, given contract sometimes, right? Because you're supposed to only wait until they're in their last year, then you can negotiate.
Yeah. But and things like coaching, there's sensitivity around it. And again, I don't know how serious I don't know how serious the club is. I mean, at the end of the day, clubs bump people all the time and say, have you got an interest? And then all of a sudden, if they're looking for another coach, they sit there and interview everyone. For me, I don't know. Put it this way. I was just asked a very broad question.
Yeah.
Are you interested in coaching? Yes, I'm interested.
Yeah.
It'd be like me saying to you, are you interested in going to New York at the end of the year? What would you say?
Yes, mate, we get it. You don't need to defend yourself here. This is just me and you. I'm your son. I'm not a journo.
Would you be interested in going to Quebec, Canada?
No.
At the end of the year? No, okay.
I wouldn't.
Sure.
Okay, so obviously you're not going to, obviously you don't know the club itself, but can I ask, what would be the clubs that you would, if you found out it were a club, and you have to isolate one club, but what clubs wouldn't you touch and what would you touch? Because if I was asked to coach, I would imagine it would be very hard to take on I would actually rather take on an underperforming club than a club, say, like Melbourne Storm.
Yeah.
Right? Because that you have a stand. You're supposed to go in and they demand instant success.
You would not get as much satisfaction. There would be nowhere near the same sense of romance if you just allowed Melbourne to maintain.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, imagine you go to Penrith. Imagine if Ivan says tomorrow, I'm done, and they approach you, hey, you want to come to Penrith? You have to win a premiership. If you don't win, nothing, even silver is not good enough.
The clubs you want to go to are the ones you look at and go, they should be doing better. And you can see things in their game that just need a little bit of tweaking. They're the ones you want to go to.
Yeah. So if let's say you obviously love doing your TV stuff right now. You love what you do in the media.
Yeah.
What would is there a certain club that you would like to work with? Not from a perspective of success, but as a playing squad. Is there a team that you think are underperforming that you'd be like, that'd be cool?
I think there's quite a few. There's obvious ones. There's obvious ones, but I've got to uproot my life and then.
Well, you could commute. I know Rylesy goes to Parramatta and he lives in Wollongong.
From Wollongong. Parramatta to Wollongong.
How long's that?
How long would that be?
Hour and a half?
Yeah, Jack, just have a bit of a look where we're going there. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it'd be about an hour. Because back in the day, the great Mick Cronin, may or may not have heard of, he lived his whole life in Gerringong. He has lived his whole life, but in his whole Parramatta career,
he lived there.
Lived in Gerringong, played for Parramatta in the days before the
that's about highway. That's about 2 hours, maybe more.
Back in the day, it might have been.
It's an hour 20, Cobber.
Hour 20.
Okay. Well, peak time traffic. Jesus, Rylesy, what are you doing?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rylesy would sit there behind the wheel, probably just things going on in his mind. He probably does a lot of his thinking and comes up with his ideas while he's sitting behind the wheel of the car.
Yeah, I would. Good on him.
Good. How is Rylesy going? Right, let's move into some of the stories going around the club. Have you spoke to Rylesy? You spoke to him quite a bit.
He rang me the other day when he was doing that drive, actually, the Ryles Files. Great man. He's very good. Sounds very busy. I think he has been quite busy with Parramatta.
He's had a lot to deal with early.
Yeah, lots and lots to deal with. So I think he's pretty happy at the moment. He gave a few boys a big rap down there. He said they train really hard, so they've been, and the playing group has been looking really good. I mean, I think you were saying the other day someone saw Junior Paulo at the airport.
Yeah. Well, I went through the airport at Ballina, and there was a young Samoan fella there who was on security. And, you go through, put the wallet in, go through the other side. And he said, Matty, he said, Parramatta came through here yesterday. He said, I can't believe how fit they looked. He said, Junior Paulo, he said, is just looked rock hard fit. So that's a great sign.
That is a good sign.
A really good sign. I tell you who's a great operator, who's there with Rylesy, Scotty Wiseman.
Where's he come from?
Scotty was years and years ago was a player at Parramatta.
Yep.
At Parramatta Junior. Then, as far as coaching, he just moved into rugby union. So he coached at the Wallabies, an assistant for a lot of years under Eddie Jones in particular. And then he was assistant coach to Eddie Jones in English rugby union. But he's been around a lot of places. He's a great guy, Scotty Wiseman.
We had him at Newcastle Cobber.
Did you?
Yeah. Adam had him there, I think midway through 22 possibly. And he has a lot of good strategies. You know how they get how they started around the league at halftime. Now you'll see a lot of teams get in their huddles. So the pack in the middle, then you'll have the right edge and the left edge and certain groups together at halftime now. I think he sort of brought that in to Melbourne, and then I know he did a bit of work there, and I think all those assistants under Craig had worked with him previously.
Yeah, he's a terrific fella too. He'd be a really good foil for Rylesy, and I reckon the players will really like him.
Good on him.
But Rylesy's, he's had a lot to do with. I mean, the Dylan Brown, Mitch Moses situation, more Dylan Brown. I mean, that's been, for Rylesy to walk into that's difficult. And they've got to get those clauses out because he's going to have to deal with it every single year. It's just that it's the worst deal I've seen done by a club to give someone that long a contract, but then give them a clause. Is it every year with Dylan?
I think it's, I don't know if it's every year. It's every couple of years. I think there was the similar thing every 2 years, Jack confirmed. I think there was a similar thing going on with Fafita and Tino up at the Titans. Remember that? Where there was clauses sort of every couple of years. They get them. Look, that's the problem at the moment with the league. If you're not Penrith Storm, you probably chuck the Roosters in there to an extent, probably not as much anymore. But particularly those two sides, they hold all the power in negotiations.
Yes. Where
you come there, and I was talking to Harry Grant about this the other day because we were unpacking some of the bottom 4, bottom 8 teams' salary cap. Now, if you're in the bottom 8, you have to pay. Say I'm a player worth 200 to get them out of a Storm or a Melbourne. You have to pay them 200,000 more than they're actually probably worth, and more than the top teams can get them for.
Yep.
So by the time you build up your squad of 30, you've probably got an extra 2 million. You spend another 2 million on that sort of average player who you should have for 200, but you've had to get him for 350. And if you're a top club, that leaves an extra 2 million in your salary cap to attract a Kalen Ponga, to attract a Tom Travojevic, to get these big name players.
Well, how many times have you heard it that someone says you get a very good young player? Well, I mean, Blaise Talangi is the best example. I don't know, but I would imagine maybe that Penrith probably wouldn't have matched Parramatta's offer, but he's going, mate, I'm going to Penrith.
Yeah.
So people will go to, as you said, Penrith, Penrith, Melbourne, and those top clubs. They'll go there for less, again, which puts so much pressure on those lower clubs. But the Dylan situation and the Mitchell situation with the clause, what they have surrendered now, Parramatta, they have surrendered power to the agents.
Yeah.
And well done to the agents.
Oh, mate.
The agents have done a great job there. You
can never press the agent's fault. They're doing the best thing they've done a great job for Mitch and for Dylan. Like if as a player, you're going, that's outstanding. Because for years, the clubs have probably held that power. But
okay, what about this? If the agents, get there 1 year and they say, Dylan really likes this player, he loves this centre, he wants to play with this centre, we want you to sign him. oh, we're not going to sign him. Well,
particularly if that centre's on their books.
This is the thing that can happen, and this is going to be the thing that Ryles is going to have to wade through in his time at Parramatta. It's going to be tricky. He's got till round 10, Dylan. Yeah, round 10. At the moment, I would say Aaron is probably 80-20, in my opinion, that he'll stay, although they're saying Newcastle's going to make a big launch on him. We'll talk about that in a second. But, if it's getting close to round 10 and they've won 2 and they've lost 6, then you don't know.
Well, this is the thing.
This is the thing about it.
I don't know how much he's on now at Parramatta, but last year they didn't have a great year. Mitch Moses was out for a lot of the year. He come back and made a real impact, particularly in State of Origin Australia arena. But Dylan had a bit of an off year last year. If he comes out and does has the same sort of performance, it puts a lot of pressure on Dylan now too. With all this speculation, if he comes out and doesn't play well, Parramatta have every chance to go, righto.
Well, I'm talking you through a little history lesson here. In 2000, Brett Camorley, Noddy, very good friend of mine, Noddy.
Yep.
Won the comp. Was a revelation at Melbourne. Come out of nowhere. 98, terrific. 99, took him to the grand final. Won the grand final of Melbourne Storm. 2000, they subsided a little bit, but he had a fantastic year as well. Was playing good enough to keep Joey out of the State of Origin number 7 jersey, right? But at the end of that year, he made the decision, Noddy, that he wanted to move back to the northern states. And what transpired was basically Noddy globetrotting, going from club to club, city to city, up around Sydney and Newcastle and everywhere, and it was reported on it every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day it was reported. And it really sounded like it put so much pressure on Noddy, and then Noddy ended up signing at the Northern Eagles, and the pressure meant the Northern Eagles had they were struggling that season, and everyone was looking at Noddy. Well, mate, you're the saviour. You're the bloke that was talking. You were supposed to say you're supposed to do this. Why aren't you doing it? And I went away that year in 2001. When I left to go to England, boys, Noddy was really like, everyone loved Noddy. This bloke who's punching above his weight, little bloke doing good. When I come back, he was like rugby league public enemy number 1.
Yeah.
Because of what had transpired there. And it took him a couple of years to get that back. So I suppose what I'm saying there with Dylan is the fact that, they signed the contract, right? They did that Parramatta, right? And the agent's the one passing him around. And as I said earlier, NRL means not real long. You get the best deal you can. But it puts pressure on the player.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if they get off to a slow start to the season, the fans aren't going to look at the agents and go, you're to blame.
Yeah.
They're going to look at Dylan.
Yeah, that's what's tough.
This is where I think you've just got to be – it's very hard these days, but you've got to find a way to do all this stuff discreetly.
And look, it might that pressure from fans or from media might not bother Dylan at all. It might be water off a duck's back, which is fine. But more often than not, you see the mental toll it takes on the player when the fans are going after him, this and that, and commenting on all the social media and hammering him on social media. Like that'll take quite. Dylan's 24.
Yeah.
Dylan's 24, 25 years old this year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure to put on still a 5'8" who's relatively young in his career.
And the $1.2 million, that's Munster money.
Yeah.
See, Munster is a bloke that will always perform at the highest level. Has amazing consistency week to week, but will elevate himself in really big games. $1.2 million is Munster money. But I do recognise supply and demand as far as halves. This is where good halves, outstanding halves that still haven't quite fulfilled their potential, why they've got the whip hand.
Yeah.
And there's talk that I don't know, I haven't heard it since, but the back end of last week they were talking about Newcastle is the club. Something like 6 million for 6 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Even a more recent example, Cobbo, is 2022, Kalen with the Dolphins. Remember?
Yeah.
You remember the KP had another year, but they were talking about what's happening in 2024, and the Dolphins went hard for him. I remember, even the playing group, we were certain that he was going to leave.
Yeah.
All the meetings with Wayne in Sydney and whatnot, and we didn't have there wasn't blame going around or anything like that. But there is a weird feeling when your star player, other marquee players come to a club for. When he's sort of teetering on the edge, it becomes a really weird feeling in the playing group.
Yeah, it can affect a playing group, no doubt about it. It's interesting with Newcastle to be a great signing for Newcastle, no doubt. But Peter O'Sullivan, the scout, and Peter Parr, both of them, as far as salary cap, boy, it's going to put strain on that. Because if you look at Newcastle at the moment, Newcastle sort of trying to find the right combination for success. So in the halves, even the dummy halves, young Matt Arthur's gone there.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's in the top 30. Would Matt be there?
I don't know if he's in top 30, but I think he's a rookie either or, so which it means he's full-time.
So dummy halves, they got Matt Arthur, Phineas Crossland, Jaden Brayley, and a young fella called Riley Jones.
Yep.
In the halves, they've got Cogger, Gamble, Jackson Hastings, Will Price. I don't know where Will's gone to. And they're saying Fletcher Sharp, they're looking at him to play in the halves this year as playmaker.
Well, they've named the trials for this week. Will Price is named at fullback. Fletcher Sharp's at 5'8".
Yeah, right.
So I think maybe they could have turned to Will Price now to be that backup fullback option for Kalen.
Yep.
Which is a good runner of the football. I think he'd probably be as damaging in 5'8" as his fullback. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic up there because you got a lot of you look at those, particularly the 5'8" position. The half 5'8" position. You look at those players. There's not a clear standout.
No.
So
no.
That's what makes it hard for the coaches to actually settle down and go, righto, you look at Melbourne, we've got Jerome Hughes, we've got Cameron Munster, and Jonah Pezzett and Tyron Wishart. They're those two levels below that where they're probably all on the same level, a lot of those halves. There's 4 or 5 halves that are all sit on the same level. How do you elevate one or two of them?
That's right.
How do you pick? Because there's not a clear standout.
And this has been the problem with Newcastle. They've constantly through last year chopping and changing. Like Jack Cogger went there after what he did for Penrith, and we're going, wow, and he would have went there under. I think he would have went there thinking to himself, I'm going to be the number one half, but was sort of in and out constantly. There was a lot of instability there. It's interesting about Fletcher Sharp. I was really impressed with him last year, but he was playing in the outside backs. And interesting, that's a quick move to move into being a playmaker.
Yeah.
The saying he's played a fair bit of his junior football in the halves, but to go from an outside back at NRL level and then go into the halves, that's a big transition.
Watched him play grade last year. Most of it was on the wing. He played well when he was at fullback as well, but he doesn't have that natural ball player stuff about him, even when he was at fullback.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen that. Maybe it's there because I would have thought what they might have thought of doing was Will Price in 6 and Fletcher at fullback. That's what if I was looking at it and they said, Hazard, yes, how are they going to fit this into the spine? That's the way I thought they might have went. I'm impressed with Price. Right, I've heard reports that there's a few things at training and he's got to work on his defence. But I thought when he played there at Newcastle last year, he just brought a bit of a spark.
Yeah, I thought he was classy.
Yeah, he is classy. He's going to bring you errors. He's going to miss a tackle here and there. He's a bit of a greenhorn, like his little green, but he just brings that little bit of charisma too. And he's got that little bit of swagger that I thought the side lacked outside of Kalen.
Yeah. Coaches can fall in a weird infatuation with, you want to see consistency every day, which is fair enough, which is what you want. You want to know what you're going to get out of your player every single week on the Saturday night. But there are some players who the risk is, the risk and the reward, it's worth taking it on.
Yeah.
Jack Howarth is a good example of that at Melbourne. They signed him on a big 5-year deal. And he's the kind of player who's at training probably not as consistent as he will get to when he's a bit older. He's still only 20, 21 years old, but and that was probably a downfall where he probably didn't get his opportunity as quick because they were worried about that. They said he wasn't ready, when injury kind of forced him into the side. And he went in there and he just blitzed him. And he was there. He played in the grand final. And
he's just natural performance.
He's the kind of player he might take a dummy or he might make a bad decision every now and then, but he brings a spark, and not every player out in the field can do what he can do.
Well, Munster. They tell me some of the training sessions with Munster that honestly, you look at this bloke and say, what's he doing here? They say going into his debut State of Origin, it's probably the worst training session anyone has put in at that level. And it just kept dropping balls and everyone's going, my God, what's going to go in? Goes out and gets man of the match. There's a great little one. And I'm not saying that it should be like this, but I heard this story the other day when I was listening to a podcast. The Brazilian Ronaldo, who's my favourite soccer player of all time, right?
Well, Maradona?
Yes. Maradona 1, R9 2.
Yeah.
So what he did, he went from Brazil to PSV in Eindhoven. It's a big Dutch club.
Yep.
When he got there, before him was an incredible goal scorer called Romario, another Brazilian. And when he arrived R9, they went, "You're Brazilian. We know how you guys roll. Mate, listen, you just come to training when you want and just basically do what you want." And he went, "What are you talking about?" They went, "Oh, because when Romario was here, he'd only train once or twice a week and he'd go out partying all the time, but he was the greatest goal scorer in our history. Isn't that how you Brazilians work?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm a professional. I train." But it's just an example how everyone is so different.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's an example. Was it interesting what I just said?
No. It made sense. I agree.
Yeah, it's what we're talking about. You're talking about training. I'd heard recently, and I don't believe it, or I find it, I take it with a grain of salt. They were saying there's rumblings coming out of the Broncos about Madge's methods now are Hardy's training. The reason I don't buy into that is that Brisbane are very split. Sort of there's half the people up there and a lot of the old boys that are, great. They're happy to see Madge there, and there's a lot of people that aren't. And I think that anything that comes out is going to get amplified, if that makes sense. I think he'll be. It's exactly what they need. They need hard work. There's magic and sweat.
Yeah. I think we're going to see. Look, it could go one of two ways. When that sort of method goes up, either everyone buys in and you see an immediate improvement, or there is, a bit of resistance and you don't see it. But I think they'll go really good up there.
I do too. I think that I can see them. I've predicted a top 4 finish.
Yeah,
at least. I think they can win. I honestly believe they can win the competition. I think he can make them jump that quick. But so here's the other thing. Like Pat Carrigan to me looks like a great pro. He looks like the bloke, sort of bloke that'd train and not whinge. And if he's the senior player, then surely there's not blokes below him, that are getting there and whinging and not wanting to train. Surely Paddy Carrigan, he's the bloke that sets the standard.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that quickly. Given what the Broncos did last year, the players would be coming out whinging about how hard they train.
Yeah, I haven't heard people saying how hard they've been training. I thought I would hear more whinging, to be fair, out of more reports of whinging and stuff like that. I haven't really read anything online, or people saying anything. But
here's a question: when you're at Melbourne, and they're the ones that set the standard, that's where the model that Match takes about pre-season and whatnot. In your time there, was there ever a player who whinged about the training?
There was, not to the coaches or anything. Like there was but there's boys like that. They get in the sheds and they go, "Oh, screw this, screw that. Don't want to do this." But there might be one or two, and very quickly that's the thing. Yeah. Very quickly that gets edged out. Like there's people that might sort of whinge here and there, but because the majority and your leaders aren't whinging, it's very quickly that mentality is very quickly. People just get on with it because everybody else is doing it. It's a pack mentality, right? Yeah. Like if everybody's whinging, or if your senior players are whinging, it filters down and everyone will whinge. But if you're the one who's whinging, you're the outcast. Everyone turns into a sheep and you just follow the pack.
But there's whinging and there's whinging. I mean, if you're getting there going, "Oh, we've got to wrestle tomorrow." Oh, no, man.
That's fine.
Torture. That's just natural, as opposed to starting to try to gather blokes, collect, blokes and say, "Mate, this is ridiculous. Let's go to someone. We're training too hard."
Yeah,
which happens at a lot of clubs.
Yeah, I'd imagine that would happen at the clubs where the players probably have more power. There was reports coming out of Souths and Parramatta the last couple of years where that sort of thing would happen, where the players because they held more power than the coaches at times, they were actually able to dictate what they wanted to do.
That's problematic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's a human condition with training that the training is good for you, but it's just so uncomfortable and so hard. It's a human condition that when you go, "Right, we're doing 8 400s," people go, "Oh no,
yeah, 100%.
I don't want to do this, but I've just got to suck it up."
Well, it's your body's natural. Like this is an extreme example, right? If you got a knife and you started cutting your hand, your brain instantly, the pain receptors instantly say, "Stop doing this, stop doing this." It's the same thing with hard track. Like it is the same thing. When you're going through a hard preseason session, sometimes it feels like torture, and your brain and your body is literally saying, stop what you're doing, walk, you need your breath, stop doing this. But you just got to, and the way that you get tougher by doing it is doing it every day. And eventually those thoughts don't go away, but you just learn to numb the thoughts.
We had Angus Crichton last week here, and it was interesting him talking about the Roosters. He sort of said, there's a great vibe at the Roosters, given the fact that the pressure is off a little bit. To an extent, most years you look at the Roosters and they're always, if not the competition favourites, close to.
Yeah.
Where this year they're down the pecking order. People aren't expecting a big season, which plays into their hands a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it's a better feeling as a player going in that where people are underestimating what you can do.
I imagine it'd be a weight off the shoulders for him. I'm keen to see, particularly blokes like Gussie and those kind of middle leaders that they've had in the years gone by, how they're going to elevate, go to another level without their proper leaders like Keary, Jared, blokes that have retired. What's the next level for them to go to?
Yeah.
Now that they're the big dogs in the club.
He gave Chad Townsend a big rap, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said he's been great. He said he's been great.
The boys up at Cowboys used to say the same thing about Chatty Townsend.
Great hair. Great hair.
Excellent hair.
And he goes good. That first year when he goes from one club to another, he usually fires, has a good season.
Yeah.
Last one before Jack's got a few questions from some of the listeners. Addin Fonua-Blake, you were speaking to Nico.
Yeah.
Nico said he has been phenomenal.
Yeah. All reports from Nicholas has said he's been amazing. He said something that you rarely see in a front rower. He was like, mate, I've never seen a lot of just his ability to talk and organise shape. Usually it's the halves and the spine who controls and talks things, where if you have a front rower or a lock, a lot of clubs have, Penrith has Isaiah Yeo, where he organises the shapes, allows the half to organise everything else outside of him. And Nico said it's been such a weight off having someone like Addin there. He organises a heap of stuff, and he's so smart with knowing when the half needs the ball. If somebody and if a shape is coming and a half or a centre starts jamming out the back, sometimes it's hard for a front rower to see that, and they throw it anyway and give you a hospital pass, whereas he picks the right option every time, apparently, at training. He's blown Nico away, actually.
Yeah, that's a great sign for the Sharks.
It's awesome.
Because that's just that one thing the Sharks need.
Yeah.
Just an extra dimension in attack and an extra hard edge. He brings both of those.
Yeah. So it's, we knew how good he was at the Warriors. He's been consistent for them the last few years. He's been awesome. So it's exciting for Sharkies fans.
And just a quick one for the Dragons fans here, and great things about Gutho.
Yeah.
It was always going to be it was the change that Gutho needed.
Yeah.
And they say he's training great. They did a session the other day, session against against Manly. They said, the way he was talking the defence into shape, the players weren't used to that. It was just brings another dimension of experience.
Yeah, the boys said the scrimmage, they were very good, the Dragons.
Can I get a quick comment from you both too? We've had listener Brett after the Laurie and the Brad Parker episodes commenting he's been really displeased with the hate towards the Dragons from you both. So I'd like you both to just give an apology to listener Brett, if that's possible.
Well, we'll never apologise for our comments. We'll never apologise for that.
We're hard men.
Yeah, we're hard. We're not
hard
literally,
men.
but yeah. But, our opinion is our opinion, correct?
Yes,
Matthew,
correct.
You stand by that?
But we have done it frivolously. We're going to do our season preview in a week or two, a big season preview. But I look at it I think they'll have a good season.
Yeah,
they'll be in the mid table. They might just sneak that seventh or eighth spot, just on the very fact that, mate, he gets their defence going. Yeah, Flano. But if Valentine goes there and can have a terrific season, Cookie. If they can get forward for Cookie, get him out of dummy half, and of course Gutho.
They've got more weapons in attack, definitely. So look, Brett, I hope we eat our words. I hope the Dragons prove us wrong, because that's what we do. All we do when we're setting challenges out there for them to make us look silly.
And I know the Ben Hunt is a big loss, but I said for the 2 years when Ben Hunt wanted to go, just let him go, because the formula wasn't working. Yeah, now they've changed the formula. Who knows?
Yeah. Have you got any other listeners?
I think Brett will be happy with that. We've got feedback. We put it out to the listeners last week. Some of your bold predictions for the 2025 season. Yep. We'll have more in the weeks coming, but here are a quick three for you. Okay, so the first one is Warriors win the comp, Metcalf to wins the Dally M. Matty to accept the Newcastle job. Cooper Johns.
Wait,
Just do one.
do one at a time?
Yeah.
No, this is one.
Oh,
this is just one. This is one massive prediction by listener Tom.
Yeah.
Right? And then Cooper Johns to take the helm Thursday and Sunday nights.
Oh, this year?
That's
that's
okay.
soon.
So Warriors win Metcalf,
Dally
Dally M. I take the Newcastle job, which means my shows are vacant, and you take that. I reckon that would. Oh, I tell you what, I'd give that about 10,000 to 1.
Would you? Okay, here's a question for you. If you took a coaching job, and and let's say you just said, "Oh, I'll do it for a year or two, see if I like it," and would you allow me to, sit on your? We'd still call it the Matty John Show. Still would leave it like that. But would you want me to just sit in and help, take over your seat for a bit?
Just trying to think how I'd answer that. Okay,
Honestly, would be nice.
if you were married and you had 3 kids and you're going overseas, would you let Munster babysit your kids for 3 weeks?
This is the thing, though. I wouldn't let. Well, how do I compare to Munster in that sense?
No, it means that the thing that you love. Would you let a person? Would you trust a person?
Yeah.
With that.
Well, you'd have to if you had to let someone. But this is the thing: you have to let someone babysit that seat.
Yeah, but well, you get someone who's got to babysit your kids. Doesn't need to be Munster. It might be Frank Penisy.
Exactly. But why aren't I Frank Penisy in this sense? Why am I Munster?
Because I'm thinking that if I go there and come back a year or two later, I'll go, what has become of this? It'll be a totally different show.
Well, you'll have more people watching.
And I just know what you like. You would not relinquish the power.
No, probably not.
You're coming up behind me. I can feel you breathing down my neck.
Yeah.
To start with.
I tell you what I don't agree with. Warriors to win the comp, Metcalf, Dally M. I think that they've had too many big losses. Sean Johnson and Fonua-Blake for me. Oh. I think they've probably been 2 of their best players the last 2 years, and I think losing them is going to be a big loss.
I'd love to see them be in the top 4.
I'd love it.
But it's going to be hard. And, losing Sean.
Yeah. And apparently Andrew Webster's doing amazing stuff with them this year. Apparently they've gone to the next level. But
Dallin broke his wrist in the trial game too. So he'll miss Vegas.
Yeah.
Next one is from Nick Wangman.
Yep.
Storm do a Penrith, lose the GF last year and bounce back to win the comp, similar to what they did in 2020 to 2021.
I love it. I said, I think at the back end of last year when we did a potty, I think Storm's the team to beat. I think Penrith have losing Luai. They've lost Troots before, but never somebody in the spine who's as integral as a Nathan or Jerome. I think that Storm haven't lost a soul, and they've gained Stefano, who apparently is training the house down there.
Is he?
Yeah. The boys said he just gets amongst his work, doesn't whinge, doesn't complain, which you probably see initially from blokes coming from different clubs. They come in and they're a bit resistant for a bit. They're trying to find their feet. Apparently, he hit the ground running, and he's been outstanding.
Well, that's a good sign.
So I think they didn't have Nelson in the grand final last year. That 1-2 punch of Nelson and Stefano is just going to be really hard to beat.
It's just about convinced me there.
Yeah, I know. I think the biggest thing for them is if their spine stays together for the whole year. Paps and Munster have had struggles with injuries.
Yeah.
Last year, sort of on and off. But I think if they can keep that spine playing 80-70% of the year, I think we're going to see a Storm side that is going to win the comp.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a fair divide between the very best and the rest.
Yeah.
There'll be a big divide. So there's certain... We'll leave it the season preview.
Okay? Yeah.
Leave them wanting more. Anything else?
The last one was DeWatson Hayes believes that the Bulldogs make the top 4 and the Roosters miss the 8.
Ooh, that's bold. I like it.
Yeah, it's not out the realms of possibility, particularly with Dogs. Look, it'd be funny with the Dogs. I think the Dogs can make that next step, but it is tricky. Like, let's go back to a few years ago when the Cowboys made the Final 4.
Yeah,
right. They're really good because they entered the season with low expectations on themselves. Then the next year, their natural thought was, right, we're just going to go to the next level. It's just going to happen. And, the RSN fell out of their season.
Yeah.
So you've just got to keep returning to the hard work all the time. And you've got to stay and have that attitude. And one thing about the Bulldogs, mate, it's a great club, but it's got big expectations.
Yeah.
So there's going to be pressure on them to start the season well. But, yeah, I think they'll have another very, very, very good season. They've got an established style now, which is a little different to everybody else. I like what they do.
Yeah, I like that feedback as well.
Sweet, that's it. We're going to leave them for the season preview coming up in the next few weeks.
Great tease, guys.
That's what we do, hook and tease.
Hook and tease like fish.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, thanks, Matt.